Good morning. Okay, today I'm going to talk about what is called how to evaluate or judge a philosopher or evaluate or praise a philosopher, whatever term you want to use. Okay, so here's the thing. Whenever we ask to evaluate something, we should remember two things. We want to question. Number one, why? Why do we do that? Number two, how? All right? Okay. Keep these 2 points on your mind. Let's go from there. First, to answer the first question, why? Why do we need to judge something? To judge, for example, a philosopher. Well, it's like how to judge a doctor. You know, when you go to see a doctor, you want to see a good doctor, right? When you see a teacher, you want your kids to go to good school, to get good education. So this word good is the key word. It's the same principle. When you judge a philosopher, you will see how much this guy or gal, if you like, is matching his or her profession or the label philosopher. That's the thing. So bear this on your mind. Let's start from here. How much you can say he's a true philosopher, just like how much you can say he is a good, real doctor, not a fake, not somebody pretentious, not somebody who claim himself to be, but actually he is not, right? That's a thing we want to chase. We want to know. All right? Okay, so here's the thing. Okay, second question to answer how he did it or how his actions matching his what he is supposed to. Okay, when we say that, we need to put into two categories. One is called objective, the other is subjective. All right, for anything subjective, meaning it's your personal opinion, it's your idea, and it doesn't have anything to do with others. So remember this. When we say subjective, it means totally different. It's opposite of a personal opinion. In other words, it means in reality or actually what he is. All right, so remember this difference. Okay, now let's go to back. First, I want to say a philosopher, how good it is or how bad it is, we judge him or her depending on the meaning of philosophy. How do you understand the meaning of philosophy? I remember a few years ago when I talked about the definition of philosophy, I raised the four criterions. Criteria, I should say, use the plural forms. Number one, is that questioning? Number two, is that systematic? Number three, is that inherited previous achievements, either in history or contemporaneously from other people, other achievements. Okay? And the last one, if you have any concrete results or fruits. You bear some fruits, meaning that is your achievement, actually, for now. And if you don't, if you have a bad one, well, that's also achievements. But anyway, judging by those four criteria. All right, that's what philosophy is about. Okay, uh, now I want to add some more words. What is philosophy? I consider generally it's like the the idea of rising high, very, very high above all other subjects. And you can see what's downhill, what's there. Sort of like you have a 2,000 feet view of things. And you can see things clearly, and you can see things where they go, how they, where they come from, and things like that. All right. So let's see how can we first categorize everything around us. Why we say this? The thing is that philosophy is a field which is not like any other field. It's on the upper stream of all the fields, other fields. In academics, in reality, it is. So it's basically non-value there. It teaches you something which is not practical, you may say. So a lot. Have you ever heard any Chinese parents put their kids into the school to learn philosophy? No, they never do that because it's useless, right? You cannot use it to make a living unless you're a professor. Remember, but that's a lot of people fighting for that position. Remember that too. So it's a sort of a mundane, sort of like a mediocre. So never mind. That's not what I consider to be a true philosopher. It's rather like sophists in ancient Greece. They teach for money. So never mind. Okay, let's go back to all the fields. Why philosophy is the upper stream in the academic field? It's the top. It's setting all the principles for other fields, setting all the values for other things. All right, that kind of a study called philosophy. In other words, because it's so new and so never heard of, so astonishing when the philosophers utter words, people normally won't accept it till their grandson, that generation, or granddaughter. That is many years later. Remember this. That's another good point. All right, how about, let's say, the fields. How do you categorize all the fields? Then you say philosophy is the upper stream. On the upper stream, or the only one. All right, let's say first, let's pick up a field. Building bridge, or driving a train, or fly an airplane. That's called useful, right? That's good, right? That's beneficial, either to people's pleasure or business or health, whatever. All right, that's I call it value studies. So what is a value study? Value studies includes all the ordinary fields, which will make or facilitate or beneficial to the people's convenience or purpose, whatever you call it. Like a business, yeah, like a products, the basic needs of material wanting, right? Everything like that. Remember, That's called values. Even it should include morality. In Chinese society, people teach you what is good, what is bad, and how you should behave. That's called value studies. Why do you remember? Why do you respect? Or should you respect your parents? That's a value system. All right. And some other cultures they don't even care. And that's the value. All right. Okay. Just give you an example. Remember this. All right. These value studies or value fields, I believe, like encompass 99% of all other fields. So the other 2% or 1%, let's say, go higher. From value studies, one step higher is called mathematics. And you know what mathematics is, right? And I do not want to go into details about what mathematics or mathematicians do. You studied arithmetics when you were a primary school student, right? And later on, you go to college. You learn calculus. Nowadays, is even when you are senior high school student, you studied calculus as well. All right, it doesn't matter. But if I want you to summarize what is mathematics, give me one sentence only. That's pretty hard for a lot of people. All right, let me put it this way. See if you agree with it or not. Mathematics is a study of quantities. Whatever can be quantifiable, then that's the object of mathematics. All right, think about that if you have never heard of it. If you know it well, good. Let's go on then. Move on to the even higher level. That's called logic. What is logic? Why logic is higher than mathematics? Because logic is a form studies. It's a quality studies. In other words, it has no value in it. Whatever you put there, as long as it's something, it's either true or false. Of course, by the way, when I say that my logic here, I mean formal logic. I don't want to include something like dialectic logic or something. People like to use that word, especially for the Chinese. And I that word is controversial, so I don't want to put into this uh, mire or something. All right, okay, let's go on. So by logic, I mean formal logic. I mean the logic of Aristotelian logic, or the later on developed mathematical logic or symbolic logic, if you like, if you know anything about it. But I believe very few people do. And since it's not very practical to a lot of people, and also it's not easy to control, to learn it, to master it, I mean. So logic is a form, filtered and given up values in it. Whatever you put in, it will work. Let's say O, A are B, and C equals A, and C is B, something like that. All right? Everybody will die, and Socrates is a guy. Socrates will die too. That kind of thing. Right? It's no matter what you put in, as long as you match the primary axiom and the conclusion must be correct. The primary, the secondary, and the conclusion must be correct in a way. All right. So logic is above mathematics because the relationship of the forms, if you like. Okay, let's go on. If you have no problem understanding this part, let's go one more step higher. What is beyond logic? Let me say, at this point, it's called philosophy. All right, what a philosophy is? Philosophy is abstract studies of things, including everything we said before: logic, mathematics, and the value-laden fields. We abstracted everything, filtered out the content. We go to the higher level. That's called philosophy. So basically, philosophy is metaphysics, according to Aristotle, right? In Aristotle's words, he put three systems of knowledge. That is, like a building bridge, he believed that belongs to a category of application. Then physics, whatever happened in nature, like plants, physics, and he's the the first person who categorized a lot of things in nature, right? That is the thing. And the third one he shared with his teacher or tutor, Plato. That is called metaphysics. But of course, that's not his word, but that part is the most mystifying part of knowledge. And Plato, his teacher, is especially good at it. And he sort of had some suspicion on that part, as long as the origin is concerned. But they agree there is a branch of knowledge called metaphysics. That's beyond any doubt. All right, philosophy on this level, the metaphysics, is the core, or the ontology, as later generation called it, of philosophy. So if you reach here, if you come here, and you know what true philosophy is. For example, under the one of the net visitor called the brackets talk about Hume. What about Hume? Hume studies the question, the experience, questions the causality of things. Did he talk about metaphysics? No, he didn't. All right, let's give you another example. Let's talk about Karl Marx. How about him? He's a big guy in the communist world, even nowadays in China. You can see his pictures everywhere. What is his specialty? All right, he studied philosophy before. He's a student. You know what his thesis for graduation? It's about atoms. So he's an atomist. He picked up a topic from the ancient Greek philosophers about the atom. That's his study. Why he didn't deal with anything else, like the Aristotle thing, or even Plato's metaphysics. He doesn't. He didn't understand. That's the hard part. That's the hard is the core of the philosophy. He doesn't understand. Go back to your thesis. See what the topic is like. It's about atoms. All right. I believe it's there's a two or three atomists at that time raised the idea of the atom. It's regarded as the core, as the root of the universe. That kind of idea. All right. That's for Karl Marx. All right. Let's go on to. Can we go higher? By the way. You may think, well, that's the end of it. You already said that's the spot which located on the upper stream of all other studies. How can you go higher? Well, let me tell you, there's something higher. That is something to summarize everything down under. Philosophy, logic, mathematics, and value studies. If you put all these into one, what do you call it? You call it relatives. All right? Everything has a limitation. Everything is relative to other things. Competition, evaluation, even forms, that's relative. That has a function, has a power, has a limitation. That's a basic idea. That's called relative. What is this study about the relatives? Everything put together. Summary as a package. That's what I call it instantology. All right? That's my stuff. Maybe you will say, oh, I never heard of it. Congratulations, you heard it now. And later on, you are ahead of other people, by the way. And one day, probably, but I'm sure it will. But remember, that's my opinion, subjective opinion. We need to wait to see if it can transfer or transform itself into reality. One day people will realize that's the truth. That's called instantology. All right, so really, relativism is everything, right? Just matching Albert Einstein's word relativity. Well, is that a coincidence, you may ask? Well, maybe. But the thing to remember is instantology's summary of everything. All right, put into a package. Okay, here you may take a deep breath, and thinking maybe that's the end of it, right? How can we go higher? Already we have the relativism. We have the relative of everything. How can you go higher? Well, it's just sitting opposite of you. That is called absolute. Absolutology, I call it. I gave it a name, just like the word instantology. I made two words, only two. Don't try it at home. That's dangerous, by the way. And unless you know what you are doing. So, sitting on the other side of relativity is absolute. I call it absolutology. What it is, read my book. I don't want to go to this because a lot of people, even I explain a lot, you still cannot or won't get a clue of it. It's like if you only know some lower level mathematics, arithmetics, if I teach you calculus, you cannot understand, right? So that's the kind of thing. If you're really interested, go to read my book. That's what I'm telling you. All right. So basically, I'm saying everything relative, everything you want to study to see the true meaning of philosophy. You have to have objective grasp of things, not only subjective. All right? You may ask, how do you evaluate philosophy if you yourself is from the field of philosophy? Well, let me tell you this. First, beware of your subject opinion. Second, you are not in that field. That's even better. For me, I'm in the field of not philosophy, but absolutologist, if you like. So I don't belong to this camp, but I know what philosophy is. So making it more objective, well, actually, there's no object anymore. How can you be more objective? No comparison of the subject versus object anymore. All right, just so leave this part. Now we come to a different level, or maybe the final level, whatever you call it. All right, I think that's all I need to say today. Hopefully, it will give you some uh, thinking or spur some new sparks on this. All right, hopefully. Thank you for listening. See you next time.